I am a grateful and enthusiastic member of Codependents Anonymous. My name is Richard, and I'm codependent as hell.
And I'm Karen, and I'm a very grateful member of CODA.
So, couple of ground rules before we start, particularly for those that haven't joined us here before. One is that if you possibly can, please turn on your camera. It really helps us to feel like we're talking to real people instead of blank squares on the screen. We just heard the crosstalk statement, but what we're trying to do here is to have a conversation. We're gonna read you some stuff. We're gonna share a little bit of our own experience, and then we're going to invite you to answer some questions. And we really do want to make a conversation out of that, which means that we may interrupt you. We may ask you questions relating to what we just heard for clarity, or we may use what you just said to segue into a new direction. It's an environment where we try to think of it as a roundtable discussion, and crosstalk is not only allowed, it's encouraged. So please don't take offense. Third, we are going to be reading, for those that haven't been here before, from some material that is not CODA conference endorsed. It's from a draft of a booklet on the promises that we're hoping to take information from this series of workshops to help fine-tune it and present it for conference endorsement at some point in the not too distant future. But it is primarily based on our own experience and on a workshop that we did here in Saskatoon on the 12 promises. So with that, is that everything?
Well, you usually start with a prayer.
Oh, yes. When we do this, we really do like to start with a prayer. We like to start with a particular prayer. It's called a set-aside prayer. So if you would just indulge us, please. Higher power, help me today to set aside the things I think I know. Help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about myself, about other people, and about this program, also that I can have a new experience in you, a new experience in myself, a new experience in these, my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. Thanks for listening. Okay, so let's get into it. What we've been doing through the year, CODA Arizona has, their theme this year has been on the 12 promises, and we've been invited to come in every other month and do a little conversation about 2 of the promises. So this is the final one on Promise 11 and Promise 12. So I guess we should start with Promise 11, which says that I trust the guidance I receive from my higher power and come to believe in my own capabilities. If step 2 is a revelation for many of us, step 3 was a lifesaver. How long have we wandered through life rudderless and without direction? Lost, we latched onto others and made them our higher power. We became easy prey for abusers and manipulators. Sometimes we limited ourselves because of the critical messages from those around us. You're bad at this. You can't dance. You always give up. When we believed these messages, they became self-fulfilling prophecies. In step 2, we are introduced to a higher power of our own understanding. The only requirements on our own definition was that it be a loving power, as in tradition 2, and greater than ourselves, as in step 2. Many of us were amazed at the idea that such a power could exist and would be there to provide guidance and strength when we needed it. In step 3, we made a decision to follow the guidance of that power to the best of our ability. Suddenly, our decisions were no longer determined solely by the self-interest of the imperfect people we obsessed over. We no longer turned our will and our lives over to the sickest person in the room. Instead, we tried to do the things that a wiser, kinder, more loving higher power wanted for our benefit. In time, our work through the rest of the steps helped us to become more consistent at hearing the guidance of our higher power and at following through on that guidance. Our decision-making and our choices became less frantic and more considered. We learned that my will is a constant urgency, God's will is a calm certainty. And we began to be able to tell the difference between the calm quiet direction of our higher power and the strident demands of our codependents. As we became more consistent at pausing and consulting our higher power before taking action, we experienced more success. It became easier to trust our higher power, and our successes proved to us that we could walk through life with courage, integrity, and dignity, as in Promise 2. When we could set aside the fears and insecurities that held us back, we discovered new capabilities within ourselves. Some of us began to accept capabilities that had always been there. We trusted the evidence of our own experience rather than the opinions of our critics. We began to be able to take risks to explore new experiences. Instead of trying to think our way into better actions, we were able to take contrary actions in order to have the new experiences that changed our thoughts and our feelings. So, first of all, I'm here to tell you that every single one of these 12 promises have come true for me in the time that I have been in CODA. I wish they were all true every day, but that's not the case. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about Promise 12. But for me, Promise 11 is a pretty big deal. You know, I say here repeatedly that it's all about step 3. Everything we do here is about step 3. It's step 1 and 2 exist to get me to that decision in the third step. And everything else is about supporting that decision and implementing that decision. Right? The rest of the steps are teach me how to implement that decision and remove the obstacles. And everything else, the phone list, the meetings, the literature, it's all about supporting that decision. And so that's hard though. When I'm new and I've just freshly made that decision, I don't know how to turn my will and my life over to the care of a loving higher power. But I start trying. I start trying to listen for the guidance. I want to make decisions based on the will of a loving higher power, a power that's smarter than I am, wiser than I am, sees further down the road than I can, instead of being controlled by other people's opinions and feelings, which was the story of my life. And so how do I do that? How do you learn to trust? Well, by trusting a little bit and having that turn out well. And so I get a piece of guidance that I think is from that higher power, and I act on that, and it goes well. So, okay, now I can turn over something maybe a little bigger. And when that goes well, then it gets a little easier to turn over something even a little bigger. And sooner or later, I hit the point where I've got a higher power with a track record. And I've got a track record of trusting that higher power and having it go well. And what's that look like when the rubber meets the road? It means that I can do things differently than I always did. We mentioned contrary action here. It's my conviction that all recovery comes from contrary action. Okay? I got here with a broken thinker. And the chances of me looking at my problem and somehow using that broken thinker to think my way out of it, really not something I got a lot of confidence in. But instead, what the program says is that I add new experiences, and those new experiences shape my thoughts and my feelings. So again, we don't think our way into right action, we act our way into right thinking. And what that means is doing things that used to scare me. So when I was 12 years old, I fell in love with 50s rock and roll. Always, all my life, wanted to be able to dance to it. But I could never risk the awkwardness and the humiliation of looking bad in a dance lesson. So about a year into recovery, Karen suggested that we take some dance lessons. The first lesson that we signed up for was 6 weeks worth of jive lessons through a community association. And, here's what I can tell you is that I navigated that process. I can't say I navigated it with dignity, but I navigated it. And somewhere around week 4, despite the fact that every week it was, I'm not coming back to this effing thing. Somewhere around week 4, something clicked and it started feeling natural. And I started feeling like maybe I could do this. That was about 18 years ago. For the last 10 years, we've been teaching jive dancing. That's a capability that I didn't suspect was within me. A few years ago, Kathy sent a message earlier here before we started saying that she was at our farewell barbecue when we left here to move to Winnipeg. We moved to Winnipeg about 7 years ago because of Karen's job, which meant that I gave up the best job I'd ever had in order to go there and be unemployed and look for a job in the same industry at the age of 50. And scared the crap out of me. But the guidance that I got from my higher power was that, Ritchard, it'll be okay. And got a job. And I failed badly for about the first 6 or 8 months. But what the program has taught me to do is to navigate that process with integrity and dignity. Put one foot in front of the other, show up every day, do my best, and give them a dime for their nickel. By the time I left 5 years later to come back to Saskatoon, people were commenting on the positive effect that I'd had on the culture of that company. In fact, they made what they thought was a pretty incredible offer in order to try to convince me to stay. But the place I needed to be was back in Saskatoon. But it's navigating that process instead of melting down, curling up in the fetal position, and running away because I felt like a failure. I don't have to do that anymore. I've learned that it's possible for me to set boundaries. Recovery in CODA specifically has taught me, and especially being a sponsor has taught me to set boundaries. Because if you're gonna sponsor people in this fellowship, you better develop boundaries. I've learned in CODA that it is possible for me to let somebody I care about have a bad day without needing to fix them or join them or run away. Again, that didn't used to be in my wheelhouse. So what's happened for me is that I get to have these new experiences. I get to look at things with fresh eyes. And I hear that guidance from my higher power on a regular basis today. Sometimes it comes from my gut. Sometimes most of the time, my higher power speaks to me through other people. Turns out that my higher power finds it easiest to speak to me through people who like to meet once a week in church basements. So when I listen to you, I hear my higher power telling me what I need to do next. So that's my experience with Promise 11. So we have some questions for exploring Promise 11. I think what we're going to do is we're with this one anyways. I'm going to read you all of the questions that we've got, then focus in on a couple of them and ask for some discussion. So these are the questions that we have here. What form does the guidance from my higher power take? What can I do to better hear the guidance of my higher power? What negative messages did I believe from others? How did these messages limit me? Have I been able to let go of those negative messages? Have I been able to replace them with new truths? Am I able to risk failure in order to explore new experiences? What new capabilities have I gained in recovery? How do I feel about myself and the people around me when I discover new capabilities in myself? So, first question I would focus on here is, what are the negative messages that we got from others, and how did those limit us? You said that I know enough, I do enough, and I'm not a fraud. And Karen and I simultaneously said, "Ooh, I like that." And I'm just going to ask Karen to comment a little bit on job stuff.
Yeah. Well, the whole job thing really means an awful lot to me. It's something that's very close to my heart. When we moved to Winnipeg, it was we were brought there for particular reasons, and it was an amazing journey. Some of it was really hard, but we wanted to come home. And I applied on a job that I thought I was applying on. Turned out to be something completely different. And I ended up being offered a position, something that was not what I thought I had applied on. And I was offered this position, and it gave us an opportunity, that opening, to come back home, because then we would have our move paid for and a lot of other things. And it's like, okay, it's totally, totally out of my comfort zone. So, and I was going to turn it down. That was interesting. I was going to turn it down. And then my higher power, like, it was nothing but, it had to have been my higher power, just the way everything turned out. I was about to turn it down within 5 minutes. And I had this person tell the person above him, he was my manager, and then his manager. So he says, "Oh, Karen had this position, but she's turning it down." And that person said, "Karen, can you please come into my office? I have something that I need to talk to you about." And they outlined for me that what was happening in the office in Winnipeg I wasn't going to be able to take the job path that I thought I was on. And that was going to be absolutely not, for a variety of reasons. And it was very clear that if I was going to move forward, I needed to go in this direction that brought me back to Saskatoon and out of my comfort zone. And my heart, I can't tell you the anxiety I felt. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. I was just in panic. And it was, okay, God, please take my hand and walk with me. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And that position actually required that I work in Saskatoon, but it was not given to me permanently at that point in time. So I traveled back and forth for 10 months, which was interesting, right? So I was out of my comfort zone, away from my Sweetie and my fur babies, back home without a home. Was weird, the weirdest place. It was through lots of conversations with my sponsor, through really plunging into meditation. I needed to. And it was like my head was going everywhere. I couldn't breathe. A good portion of time, I couldn't breathe, but I had to believe that I was there for a reason. I came to accept that. I got the job permanently, and they moved us back, right? And it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing now. This is what I'm going to be doing. And I have about 10 years to retirement. I can learn how to do this job. And I had fabulous managers, and they believed in me. And through my sponsor and the fellowship, through meditation and a lot of prayer, I started to be able to believe in me too. And I was taking the baby steps, and it was amazing. And I was still, the learning process is hard, but it sure gave me an opportunity to really take the hand of my higher power and ask my higher power to walk with me. And when I fully accepted that, I had the strangest thing happen. I was working away at my job one day, And I got this message via email that said, would you be open to listening to a staff or to a telephone conversation, staffing opportunity? And I was like, well, this is weird. But sure, my God has taught me never to immediately say no, because that other job in Winnipeg that, I was going to say no right then and right there. And something said, wait. And in this job, this other one, the email, it was like, are you open to a staffing opportunity? It's like, well, you know what? I have nothing to lose. 5 minutes of my time. It's okay. And I thought that this particular person was just going to tell me that there's this job coming open. You might want to throw your hat in the ring. And she actually offered me my dream job. And I could stay in Saskatoon because I'm now working for our headquarters based out of Ottawa. And I am working in Saskatoon, and it's back in my comfort zone, and I love it, but if I wouldn't have taken all those steps, trusting in my higher power, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I'm just amazed with the way in which my higher power works, because I'm walking through fear. I'm shaking, it's the God, I don't know how to do this. I want to act courageous. And I have to remember that when I act, or take the hand of my higher power and walk through things, I face the fear, like that idea that courage is fear that has said its prayers, really means a lot to me, because I don't feel courageous when I'm taking a lot of these actions, and I do it with knocking knees. But when I say, okay, God, I don't know how to do this, let's do this together, amazing things happen. And that's what I know, is I get to lead a life today that I never dreamed was possible. I'm so grateful for the programs and for the level of higher power.
So I think because we want to address at least one more question before we have a break here, this is a good place to segue into, am I able to risk failure in order to explore new experiences? And I know Carol and Betty had their hand up on the other question, but if we could shift directions, I'd sure appreciate it. For myself, I mean, I already talked about learning to dance and now teaching it. After we moved back here from Winnipeg, I really tried to get back into the same company that I'd been working for before we moved to Winnipeg. I left there on fabulous terms. They really did miss me, but they'd taken the job that I had and they parceled it out to like 5 other people, and they really didn't need me. But what happened is, after I've been here and unemployed for about a year, I got a phone call from them. And they said, yeah, the person in charge of our books is retiring. We really want to get somebody who we trust in a position like that. And now I'm a production guy. I've always loathed the bean counters in this business, right? But I did go to business school and had some 20-year-old knowledge of accounting practices, and so I took some refresher courses and I took on that job. And after I love the fact that after like 18 years of recovery from codependency, my new job title was controller. That's my higher power sense of irony. And yeah, I mean, no confidence in my ability to do that, other than my ability to try, to do my best, put one foot in front of the other, give them a dime for their nickel, and see how it turns out. Turns out I'm not bad at it. I'm doing a remarkably good job. In fact, I had to negotiate a raise because I got too good at the job, and that meant it was getting done quicker, and I wasn't getting enough hours. So, so I had to get a better hourly rate in order to maintain some kind of income. But that's me. How about you? You able to risk failure in order to have new experiences? Okay, Aaron's gonna take it over on Promise 12.
Wow. Okay, so if you just joined us, maybe because of the daylight savings time stuff issues, as we said at the beginning of this session, what we're reading from is not conference approved literature. It's actually a draft of a workbook, or not a workbook, a pamphlet, I guess, booklet. I'll eventually get the right terminology, that is being developed on the 12 promises. And so we've been doing these sessions and getting some feedback from participants, and hopefully that'll help kind of shape the direction and that the booklet is going in. So this is Promise 12. I gradually experience serenity, strength, and spiritual growth in my daily life. It has been said that when we stop growing, we stagnate. Stagnation can be defined as dying very slowly. That's what many of us were doing before coming to Codependence Anonymous. When we honestly work the 12 steps and practice the 12 traditions, we change and grow. We can't help it. We don't even have to believe it will work when we start. It just happens. Our newly found relationship with a higher power equips us with a new source of guidance and strength. Our daily practice of step 11 brings us into closer contact with a higher power and relieves us of our fears. We begin to see glimmers of that peace of mind we call serenity. We begin to be able to take risks and experience successes. Our work in the 4th step inventory helps us to see the reality of our lives more clearly. Our work in service to CODA helps us to learn patience and tolerance. Our inventory work and amends in steps 8 and 9 helps to free us from guilt and shame over our past actions. All of these actions contribute to our feeling of serenity. Carrying the message of CODA to others in step 12 is often described as a greatest opportunity for spiritual growth. As we work with newcomers and sponsor others in CODA, we cement our own relationship with the steps and with our higher power, and we grow. This doesn't mean that we are cured. Progress, not perfection, is the goal. Our aim is always to be just a little bit better today than yesterday, to the best of our ability. It doesn't happen overnight. For most of us, looking back through these promises, we are sometimes surprised at how many of them have come true for us. At other times, we are excited at how much more growth is in store for us. As it says in the CODA welcome, we have all learned to survive life, but in CODA, we are learning to live life. Living is a process of growth. The 12 promises give us a measure that we can use to see that we are growing, that we are living. So Promise 12, I gradually experience serenity, strength, and spiritual growth in my daily life. And I really do love this promise. That idea that I gradually experience it. It's not something that happens overnight. And I don't know about you, but I want to have the progress that I want to have progress continuously. And I want to see that always that upward spiral, like always. But it doesn't feel that way, and often I only get to see my progress by looking back. And although I'm not the person I want to be, I can thank my higher power that I'm also not the person I used to be. I need to be able to look back at the beginning to see how far I have come. That idea of progress, not perfection, is so important. I love the idea of having a program that we can live one day at a time and try and practice that to the best of my ability. There's days where I don't feel as though I've made any progress at all. I feel as though, I'm a newcomer again, and I seem to be using all the wrong words and expressing myself in all the wrong ways. But thank goodness I can take up the tools of this program, and I can say, what I said just now, I said it the wrong way. I'm really sorry I said what I did in the way in which I said it. Please forgive me. That's a lot easier to say now these days. It was so hard to even, like when I first came into program, to be able to say I was wrong. When I was struggling so hard to be right all the time, to be able to say it was wrong of me was really hard to do. I found it a lot easier for some time to use different terminology, such as I was incorrect. What I said was suboptimal. There's lots of different ways of saying it, but nowadays it's just easier to say it was wrong of me to have done that, and it rolls off my tongue a little bit more easily, especially with certain people. Harder with some others, but it's progress, not perfection. So I'm really, really grateful for that. There was a lot when I was reading this. What we were talking about in the Promise 11 really resonated with that idea of our failures and what we used to fear, and that negative self-talk. It just, all these promises blend in with one another and they support each other. So that's all actually I'm going to say about Promise 12 and my experience with that at this time. So Richard?
I think like step 12 kind of summarizes everything that's come before. And tradition 12 is the spiritual foundation for all the other traditions. Promise 12 really kind of summarizes what's happening in the first 11 promises for me. Because that serenity, strength, and spiritual growth are the basis of everything that's happening in any of the other promises for me. And the key word that I got to focus on, that I have to remember, is gradually. If I spent 40 years digging a hole, I'm not going to climb out in 6 weeks. That's just not how it works. And gradually, means little by slowly over time. The idea that I'm not cured, I'm just getting better. The gradual nature of my recovery is probably best encompassed in the phrase, the longer I'm here, the sicker I was. When I was 5 years in, I couldn't believe the difference between 5 years in and me walking in the door to my first meeting. I look back at that 5 years in recovery, Ritchard, today, and go, oh my God, he was screwed up. Let alone how sick I was walking in the door, because more is constantly being revealed. And so the goal really isn't even in getting better from that first day walking in, or that 5 years in, or the 10 years in. The goal is always, for me, just being a little better than yesterday to the best of my ability. That's all I got.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about when I was reading this is that idea of sponsorship. Is so important. When just the other day I had this opportunity to speak with someone, and she's phoning. There's a family crisis happening, and it's what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to practice this? How do I practice this program? How do I actually practice this program right here, right now? And it's like, at one point in time, I had that same kind of, what do I do with this stuff? When we first come in, the tools of this program seem so elusive. They seem like that, like a fairy tale kind of invisible reality. But, the tools are so very, very real. And in this situation, not being upfront and close and personal in the situation, we get to see a different perspective. And that's so nice that we can actually step back and see somebody else's reality, and we can give them options. We don't tell them what to do, but we can point out some options for them that they can't see because they're too close to it, right? And in this situation, it was very simply, all you really need to do is be there. You know, offer your hand, not your, you know, and shut up. You don't have to give them a bunch of advice. You don't have to do anything. All you need to do is be there and sit with them, walk with them, hold their hand, just give them your presence. You know, and it was a lovely experience. And I need people in the program to be able to do that for me too. Because sometimes when I'm involved in my own drama, I can't see the options. Well, sometimes, no, when I'm involved in my own drama, I can't see the options. It's just as simple as that, right? So I love these promises and the steps. So we have some questions for you. We're going to throw them out. And if he has anything that he'd like to comment on, we're going to give you first shot at any question that you may have. So exploring promise 12. Let's see what resonates. What does spiritual growth mean to me? What new strengths have I found in my recovery? I like that one. How about this one? Well, just going to give you 3 for now. How do I find serenity? Do I experience serenity in my daily life? So if somebody wants to speak on any of those, what does spiritual growth mean to me? What new strengths have I found in my recovery? That just resonates really well with Promise 11 that we were talking about previously. That resonated with me, you know, such things as that came to mind for me were I'm not a hostage on the phone. I love that idea. My sponsor taught me that early on. She said, you know, you don't need to be taken as an emotional hostage. When I'm on the phone, I'm not a hostage. I can say, just as you said, no, I need to let you go now. Goodbye. Yeah.
Well, the one that resonated with me was the saying no without guilt, because it speaks to the gradual nature of my recovery. Right? I can do that today. Early on, I could say no, but I was going to feel the guilt. And the trick was to not be controlled by the guilt.
Yeah. That idea of second guessing myself and did I do the right thing? Did I do it wrong? Did I do it wrong? What should I have done? It's like, wait a sec, Karen, you're not big enough to screw up God's plans. Oh, right. I'm not big enough to screw up God's plans. We've got to remember that. We're running out of time here. We're at 3:55. I want to thank everybody for sharing today. This was it's so much more meaningful when we actually have interaction. It's a lot more fun, goes a lot faster. I learned. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing with us and spending time with us this afternoon, or whatever time of day it is where you live.
Well, and I want to thank everybody that's been coming all year. It hopefully is going to result in a better. And on that front, I'll just say stay tuned.
And over to the powers that be. Okay.